So, I'm laughing because I messed up really bad the first time. I'm gonna read some screenshots from a video. I kind of left some of it in there so that way I can look back at this and hopefully remember what video this was. But this is someone talking about how they just believed that they were schizophrenic and they went along with it because one, they seem to not really know how common what they had going on was, and also they didn't know about trauma and all that. Which, of course, all mental illness comes from trauma anyway, so it wouldn't make much of a difference in schizophrenia means split minds. All mental illness is different forms of double mindedness. Certain labels do have more stigma than others, though. I mean, of course, like I always said, the label is a stigma, but that's another story. But I'm gonna go over this and hopefully have time to react to a video of somebody talking about their schizophrenia. And one thing that I'll go ahead and say is that it's really a spectrum. Schizophrenia is honestly multiple different things, just like autism. In fact, funny enough, when I was still in my Munchausen Cash for Kids system situation, at one point some psychiatrist said that they told my mom anyway that they don't see autism and schizophrenia different. Just like how at one point autism wasn't seen any different than being a sociopath or quote unquote psychopath. It still isn't to some people. So, what point was I getting at with that? Oh, yeah, I think just from the things that I've pieced together, schizophrenia definitely seems like a spectrum. And like I've said in other videos, and maybe even in the video I have about the different things that cause schizophrenia or something like that, there's one end of the spectrum where honestly, it's no different than being a quote unquote narcissist with the Jezebel, Leviathan, and other spirits. So, yeah, but then there's of course the side where you could be nice, you could be friendly and all that, but you're just going through some serious spiritual warfare. And yeah, and also schizophrenia, just like quote unquote bipolar. I say quote unquote because most likely you've never met anybody who actually has bipolar, even if they have the label. And I don't know anybody that's ever met somebody who actually has bipolar. I've never met somebody who actually has bipolar. I've never met somebody where they're depressed for 1 week and then they have mania for another week and then never ever. You probably never will, to be honest. But the people who commonly do get the label thrown on them, it's similar to the bad black boy with ADHD label. So for girls who have anger problems and fight a lot because of sexual trauma, they'll get the bipolar label more likely, but a boy will get the ADHD label. And yeah, so bipolar, schizophrenia, and what was the other one? It was the third one. Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, and DID. And I think it was another one, but I can't remember. But those three come from sexual abuse. And yeah, that's all I had to say about that. And like I said, quote unquote bipolar. I don't know about real bipolar. I've never even met anybody with real bipolar. But the kids in the Cash for Kids system, at least who commonly get the label, have anger issues and they fight a lot from sexual trauma, just trauma in general. So yeah, they get labeled as bipolar because they've gotten into 2 fights at school, pretty much. And then other ones commonly actually have BPD. And of course, when you're in the Cash for Kids system, at least, there is no point in time where you actually get a real evaluation and you sit down and take a test on your symptoms. And honestly, if you ask me, I don't really think that these people actually want to diagnose people with anything that they actually show symptoms of. Because I mean, there's people who got the autism label in childhood and it was kept a secret from them, and then eventually their parents admitted it to them, and then they tried to go get it put on paper at 18 plus so they could try to get some quote unquote services for it, or at least affordable housing, but they weren't able to because getting labels at 18 plus is honestly really hard, especially ones like that. Doctors only ever want to throw labels like that onto you, when they could like use it to be a flying monkey in some cash for kids system abuse situation. But other than that, like going and getting an autism label or any label put on paper, put back on paper, it's extremely hard. Like I remember this old counselor I had, the one that I was actually allowed to talk to, that my mom had cut off and threatened. We would have talks about how I would like obviously have CPTSD, but if I was to try to go get that put on paper, that would be just about impossible. And of course, like a lot of doctors still don't even believe in that, but yeah, because I've already spent 5 minutes talking about something kind of irrelevant. So there's that. It's all a spectrum. That's my point. And let me hurry up and start reading this. I was emotionally and physically abused by both my parents and older brother when I was growing up. Got bullied a lot all the way through public school in a small farming community in middle America because I was smart and didn't know how to hide it. Started having psych problems at age 17. Quote unquote psych problems, really just trauma symptoms. And probably even like some spiritual warfare, I guess, from the demonization from the fact that abuse is a demonic ritual. But could just have something to do with the area they lived in general. Or, of course, maybe they're just anointed or prophetic and they already have, like, what do people call it? They're already in tune with the spiritual realm and, knowledgeable and stuff. But both those things usually go hand in hand because, like, if you're anointed, you're probably going to go through a lot of trauma anyway. And it doesn't even mean, like, with family stuff. Just, like, the fact that anointed / prophetic people will commonly have run-ins with the Jezebel spirit, which is one of the spirits over quote-unquote narcissism. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia at age 20. I'm now 43. I have found therapy to be almost pointless as no therapist I've ever talked to over the last 23 years even wants to discuss my childhood as soon as they see that schizophrenia diagnosis. Of course these people also know that all mental illness comes from trauma, but like I don't know, it's really just stupid bias stuff. All I can really say about it. As far as hallucinations go, they were always the voices of my abusers, but never like out there. When my doctor asked me if I heard voices, I said yes. I never realized at that point that everyone hears thoughts in their head. And it's true. And everyone hears voices too, to be honest, or at least everybody acts like it. And it could depend on what quote unquote voices are, but I'm going to go into that eventually. If I'm even able to edit the other part in anyway. These thoughts are what I was hearing. I did have a psychiatrist suggest a more accurate diagnosis could be CPTSD a year ago. I wish I could have stayed her patient, but because of circumstances, I had to change doctors when I moved 2 states away. Long story short, I couldn't work because of crippling anxiety and ended up on disability pension in my late 20s. I wonder if all of this could have been avoided if not for that likely wrong schizophrenia diagnosis. My first psych doctor didn't bother to ask me if I was abused as a kid. Back then I thought physical and emotional violence were normal parts of raising children. It's possible I lost my childhood to an abusive family and my adulthood to a bad diagnosis. Is this recording? Funny enough, she starts her videos off just like I do. And also, I noticed that she looks like China Anne McClain, or at least some would. Probably just the same ethnicity.
Okay,
Well,
so lately I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos of people who have schizophrenia and stuff like that. And I thought, why not tell my story? So, it started when I was a little kid. And forgive me if my thoughts are kind of all over the place. I have disorganized thinking. It started when I was little. Let's say, I want to say 10 years old. I was...
Oh, and by the way, I do actually have, like, a script. Well, not even really a script, but notes I wrote out for this. So I can actually, like, talk about what I need to talk about and get it over with. I think I already went over some of this in the first half with the screenshots. Mental illness comes from trauma/abuse. Trauma creates holes in the soul/voice which let in spirits. Also, since abuse is a demonic ritual. Trauma also causes brain damage and quote-unquote neurodivergence. The spirits have manifestations or signs which are symptoms in psychiatry. Just like how all abusers have symptoms, or, well, wait a minute, all abusers have signs because they're signs to go along with whatever spirit is it that they let in them in whatever way. Most likely going back to trauma, so that they're just letting use them and work through them, along with like issues they have in general that are just their personality.
Molested, and that went on for like a decade. It just stopped recently, and it was bad. It was really bad, like incestuous and like really bad.
Wait a minute. Did I miss something? If I heard what I thought I heard, because I don't even remember hearing that the first time I watched this.
On for like a decade.
Okay, no, I don't.
Let's say, I want to say 10 years old. I was molested.
Okay, yeah, I didn't even hear that the first time I watched this. I don't know how in the world I watched the whole video.
Went on for like a decade.
So yeah, that explains the whole situation even more. Cause like I just said, I didn't even hear that the first time I watched this, and I already mentioned some of this in like the screenshot part where I was reading someone's experiences about how they have CPTSD but got diagnosed with schizophrenia instead, which is really common because no real evaluations are ever done. Well, I mean, unless you actually can like find a psychologist to go to, but I mean, even that's wishy-washy. But you'll notice that most of these experiences that people have where they get screwed over by the mental health system revolves around psychiatrists. Not never, but rarely ever psychologists. And you'll probably never meet somebody in the Cash for Kids system with a whole bunch of labels or any label that's ever even seen a psychologist. Not that it would make much of a difference because, of course, they play flying monkey to abusers too because that's what they get paid to do. But it's just really rare. What point was I getting at? Oh, yeah, so it's just not common to get an evaluation. That's pretty much my point. Wait a minute, let me read some more of my notes though. I don't even think I finished reading the first half. Which are symptoms in the psychiatry world. Deliverance ministers say the number one reason for demonization, in the Western world at least, is child abuse/trauma.
It just stopped recently, and it was bad. It was really bad, like incestuous and
so,
like really.
Her abuse just stopped recently, but she looks like she's 20-something maybe. So there's just so much I could say about that. Because she said later in the video she got her diagnosis in like her late teens. So if you look about 20-something now and you got your diagnosis a little while ago and your abuse just recently stopped, she's definitely still living with her abusers, which I have some notes about that somewhere in here.
Bad. And I had nobody to turn to. And I remember my mother, she told me if anything bad should happen, I can always talk to her. So the day that I finally got the courage to speak to her about it, she killed herself. So I never got to talk to her about it. And I just I kept it to.
But yeah, like I already said, plenty of videos, and I have a video specifically about like the soul damage effects of SA. I don't even know what I titled it, to be honest. But in that video, which I'll link in the description, I go in detail. That's gonna keep popping up if that's even visible on the screen recording. But my phones, they like break easily due to the condensation, respiration, the hot air and the cold air. So the CPU's broken. Like, what are they called? Prompts pop up all the time saying my phone isn't working or something. But yeah, so anyway, point is, sex in general definitely a quick way to become demonized, and of course, the ritual of being sexually abused also is another way, and of incest.
Myself. I didn't tell anyone. I haven't really told anyone besides my dad. Nobody else really knows. And so I kept it to myself, and as the years went by, I started to get really depressed. And people would say, oh, you have depression, you have this, you have that. And I would say, no, I'm not mentally ill, I'm just tired. And it all, what happened? I was tired all the time, and I lost motivation to really do anything, and all the things.
And that's another thing too. Something that is never talked about, even though there's like an obsession these days with mental illness, is never talked about how, like, quote unquote losing your mind or like falling really deep into trauma and demonization. It's a process. You never just wake up one day and you're like, quote unquote bipolar. I'm not gonna go back into that whole bipolar thing. This is a joke I actually used to make all the time when I still did the abuse evidence videos. When I would talk about how mental illness comes from trauma anyway, but mental health professionals, and of course abusers, like that, like somebody just like walks outside and catches depression or bipolar or something. But that's not how it works. It's definitely a process, and the signs are commonly ignored. Of course, they're going to be ignored by the abusive relatives anyway, but the signs are ignored, just like with pedophilia, if I can even mention this without the video being taken down. Pedophilia actually doesn't even start in adulthood. It actually starts in childhood, and it's ignored. Not that mental health professionals can treat that anyway. That's a deliverance issue. Commonly even like revolves around some generational stuff. But still though, it's a process that's ignored. And I don't think I have anything else to say about that.
That I liked, like sports. I was really big into sports. Art. I love art. It just wasn't fun anymore. So I lost interest in all that stuff. And all I wanted to do was sit in my room all day and do nothing.
It sounds like schizophrenia, just like some other issues, give people like a spirit of heaviness, which can give like depression like symptoms where you just feel like there's a dark cloud over and you can't do anything. But I also feel like it probably has something to do with like the trauma and nobody caring and it being ignored, and just like the weight of the trauma on you. It sounds like that too. And maybe even like the demonization getting worse, which I assume a lot of other things end up happening too that make the situation worse. But some things are also about like temperance, which is like how you were already like destined to be. Not saying anybody's destined to be quote unquote schizophrenic or anything like that, but like some people are just already certain ways, and so that's also goes into why, like, when one person gets I don't know, essayed, they can become hypersexual or end up liking the same gender, liking older people or liking younger people, but then another person could end up becoming what they call asexual. That, I mean, that has something to do with like maybe temperance, but also like whichever spirit you get. There's a lot of stuff with that. But that's what that sounds like to me. Sounds like the weight of the trauma, maybe even the spirit of heaviness coming over the person as like their internal state gets worse.
Thing. And I did that for like a year. And eventually, my dad said I had to see a doctor, to talk about it. And I refused at first, but he was my dad, and I was 15 or so at the time. And when I went to see the doctor, they asked those usual doctor questions. And one of the questions they ask is, are you thinking about hurting yourself or others? And I said, yes, I was thinking about hurting myself. And they took me to the hospital. And at the hospital, I told them I was hearing voices.
The funny thing about that, though, is that when people are like really, can I even say this word? When people are really like ready to unalive themselves and they go to the hospital, they just get told that, not saying that this person wasn't, but this is just like the side thing. They go to the hospital and then they get told that they're just faking it for attention, and then the hospital just kicks them out. And they really don't care, but depending on what your situation is, they can, I don't know, make more money off of it. That's exactly why the cash for kids system is what it is. Because it's like, these systems really wouldn't be able to make money without people either having no parents or abusive parents. That's where most of their money comes from. Different branches of the cash for kids system, anyway, not just the mental health system, but the mental health system is tied into every single branch, though. And another thing is, the questions that they ask about like whether you're thinking about hurting yourself or others, especially the others part. Well, no, really both, but the others part that goes into like a video I made before, a couple of videos I made that I have a whole playlist about, titled Projective Heroism, how why abused kids end up getting life sentences and charged as adults when they're only 10 for defending themselves against people who literally traffic them. Like, and I mean like sex trafficking, not like the lower level cash for kids system trafficking. Like, there was literally a teenager who got put in prison for killing her own sex trafficker to escape. And this wasn't even somebody who was related to her. This was a whole full blown kidnapper, and she went to jail. Because, usually when the abuser is a relative and you defend yourself from them, that's the excuse for why the kid was put in jail. But I mean, like I always say, lawyers and judges, they don't like to charge or lock up their own kind, but they love to lock up and charge the victims. But yeah, anyway, in an abuse situation, they like to blame the victims for wanting to quote unquote hurt other people or defend themselves. I mean, I don't know what this person specifically meant in their situation, but I know that's commonly how it goes. And then as far as like the hurting yourself thing, they literally trap you in a situation to try to make you feel like your only escape is unaliving yourself, which is exactly why, like, some people really push for there to be like info out there about how to run away slash escape abuse situations successfully under 18, so people don't get trapped being trafficked through the cash for kids system or even other trafficking situations that they're in due to their abusers. And also so people don't get trapped in the whole suicidal thing. Oh dang, I was trying to not say that. But maybe this won't get taken down. I mean, I think it should be good though. It depends, but I'm not monetized, obviously.
And the voices, see, my thoughts are all over the place. Like, I'm going back now. When I was younger, I started hearing voices. It wasn't all of a sudden one day the voices were like, hey, how's it going? Really loud. It started out really quiet. I would hear somebody, and I would think that they were calling me. I would hear somebody saying my name, like, Maya, Maya. And I would turn and be like, who's there? But nobody would.
Another thing I have to say, in the deliverance world, it's also believed that like people with these different labels are anointed prophetic. Now, of course, I go into the Cash for Kids system thinking how like you're gonna get a label if you're put in the Cash for Kids system, and it's usually not going to be anywhere near true. You may not even be at the point of trauma where you even actually have an issue yet when you get your label. Because, of course, the Cash for Kids system is Munchausen by proxy, and they create the issue by beating it into your head that you're messed up to mess you up even before you've actually really gotten super duper traumatized and messed up. But, like, it's just believed that, like, I don't know, the people who have issues like this are also anointed. But it makes sense though, because like now to think about it, if you already are wired a certain way, quote unquote neurodivergent, where you already are like more in tune with the supernatural and more likely to be able to like, yeah, I guess I don't know how else to say it. You already are like able to receive spiritual signals easier, because just like Pastor Stephen Darby said, what being gifted really is, or what a gift really is, as far as like a supernatural gift, is being able to receive spiritual signals, whether it's good or bad. So it makes sense that when people who are already anointed go through trauma, they're more likely to end up like this. If for one, they don't like get counseling and healing and all that stuff. And also if they don't know how to like deal with their gifting. Because of course, with the white supremacist philosophy of atheism and the current systems put in place to make money off of people, you're more likely to get like told that you just have some issue going on, which makes it even harder for people who are anointed or prophetic to even find out that they're anointed or prophetic. Also because of like the religious churchianity bullcrap and how no one wants to talk about what they really should be talking about, so that way people don't get dragged off into weird philosophies like psychiatry or other things. And of course, just the fact that if you're anointed or prophetic, you're more likely to be in a narcissistic family system, which means you're going to be scapegoated. And of course, when you're scapegoated, you're blamed for all the family's issues. So they're going to call you bad, crazy, and slow, regardless of if you ever even get thrown into the Cash for Kids system or not. Because, I mean, there are people who are in families like this before, like, the Cash for Kids system was even that much of a big thing, at least, I mean, other than like the orphanage part, but before like the mental health system, TTIs and all that were really big, people who were in like these family systems would get labeled as different things by their family systems, even without ever getting like a label put on paper by some psychiatrist, because that wasn't like a big thing at certain points in time. And yeah, so there's that.
Be there, and that just freaked me out. Then eventually it became hello, hello, and I started talking back to them, and we met.
I wrote something down on my notes that I haven't been reading about this. And it's just something funny that I noticed, especially when it comes to people who have schizophrenia. It's like the psychiatrists, they tell the people that they're just imagining stuff, and like nothing that they're hearing is real, nothing that they're seeing is real, almost like they feel like the person is just like faking it or something, but they never tell the person to just not respond or not listen to the voices, which I feel like they do that on purpose, but that's just really weird to me. You tell somebody none of it's real, almost as if they're faking it, but you never tell them to just maybe try to ignore it and just like it says somewhere in the Bible, resist the devil and he will flee, like, or pray against it. I don't know, something like that. But it's like it's almost like the psychiatrists want people to engage with this, which of course, the more you give in and the more you like act on these different spirits that are telling you whatever, the worse it actually gets. So, yeah, it almost seems like they want the issue to be there.
And now there are like 7 of them living up here. I remember I asked, "What's your name?" And he said, Halio.
And of course, I looked that up because commonly people with schizophrenia, they'll be naming these different things that are talking to them, and then when you look it up, it's actually like a demon, and it's like in different occultic books and all that. And of course, just because like whatever spirit's talking to them gives them some name that you can't like see anything on when you look it up, doesn't mean that they're like it's. I mean, of course, it's gonna be a demon, but they may just be lying about their name because that's really common. Because of course, it's easier to cast a spirit out if you know the name anyway. So it would make sense that some will lie about their name, which is why some people with schizophrenia, they'll say that like the spirits are telling them that their name is some number or something, which may be true, maybe like a nickname or something. But yeah, I looked that up, and I'm gonna edit in a screenshot of what I found. I looked up Helios,
Halio.
which is considered like what do they call it? Not. She said she talks to Martians, but it said something else. Almost reminded me of the spirit Hegate that somebody told me about, which is a moon spirit. So I guess maybe it has something to do with astrology or something like that. But this spirit didn't say anything about Mars. It said something about some other planet. Can't even remember.
And he said, Halio 5. So I wrote it down, Halio 5. And he's kind of my best friend now. He's a Martian, because I talk to aliens. But it was like that. It wasn't just an overnight thing. It started out with whispers. And then the whispers turned into full-fledged voices. But the whispers, they would say, like, some of them were good, some of them were bad. The bad ones were really bad. Like, they would say, "Oh, you deserved what you got. You're worthless. That's why all that abuse happened to you. I'm glad your mom's dead," stuff like that. And it would just make me cry. And then they started telling me to hurt myself. So, like, slam your arm against this thing, and I would do it, and I would hurt myself.
And that's the issue. You're told that none of the stuff that you're hearing is real, but you're never told to not listen to it.
And it got to the point where I was willing to do anything they said. So we had made a plan, and I was supposed to kill myself. And that was around the time that I went to see the doctor. I'm going back to the doctor. And when she found out that I had plans to kill myself, she called my dad, because I was a minor, and she called 911, and I was hospitalized. That was my first time in a psych ward, a pediatric psych ward, because I was a kid. And I told them that I was hearing voices and that I was trying to hurt myself. And I didn't think much of it. Looking back, that's a pretty big deal. You're hearing voices and you want to hurt yourself. But back then, I didn't think it was a big deal. So,
I mean, after all the trauma and the other stuff that happened, that it seemed like nobody really cared about, it would make sense why she wouldn't think big deals are big deals.
they put me in and they put me on Risperdal, and after a while, my mind sort of cleared, and I was able to reason and not.
Probably because these drugs also, they sedate you, which can also affect your pineal gland, which that's part of what these different spirits that she's hearing would use to communicate with her. Although, of course, I mean, they're probably mostly already inside of her due to like the abuse she went through, not just like on the outside. In fact, just like different deliverance ministers say, you're never casting demons off of people, you're casting demons out of people. But sometimes there's also like the outside stuff. But yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
Listen to the voices. So I asked one of the people working at the desk, the nurses, why am I here? And they're like, you're here because you were trying to kill yourself. And I said, do I have a diagnosis?
But I thought she went there because her dad said she had to go. Then she admitted that she wanted to unalive herself.
And they said, yes, you're here for depression and schizophrenia. And that's when I found out that I had schizophrenia.
It's funny that they say that though, because I thought that like depression or depressive like symptoms were a part of schizophrenia. But let me not even get into that, and let me not start telling them about what their books say.
Schizophrenia in the psych ward, the pediatric psych ward, when I was on Risperdal. So that is my story of how I got diagnosed with schizophrenia. I wish I remember more, but during my psychotic phases, I don't remember a lot. So,
and that's how dissociation works too, because at certain traumatic points in your life, you're going to be more dissociated, regardless of like if you have any. I was about to say if you have any symptoms that like point towards a certain diagnosis, but I guess I can't even really say that because I mean, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I don't know, but yeah. Let me just keep going. At certain points in your life, during your abuse and trauma, you're gonna be more dissociated, and maybe even in situations like this, of course, you have like a lot of spiritual warfare type stuff going on, and so when spirits are like taking over you, you're not gonna remember much. Cause like I mean, when I was doing the abuse evidence videos back on the Part 1 channel, I even had a couple videos of this whole scenario. It was me, my dad's girlfriend, a couple other people around. And basically there was this whole argument, and one of my dad's multiple girlfriends had even like started praying in tongues or something, quote unquote. I don't know if it was real tongues, but she started praying and stuff because my dad literally started manifesting, and the demon was speaking out of him, saying I had been alive. Saying I've been alive for over 5,000 years, and then my dad started threatening me and his girlfriend, claiming that we were trying to crucify him and a whole bunch of bull crap. And then after things like this would happen, he would claim he doesn't remember it. So yeah, that's how possession works. And of course, being demonized and being possessed are two different things. What I always say is that possession usually happens at certain points in time. Unless you're like really, really broken and traumatized and you have so many fractures to where you're not even there anymore, to where you're like completely possessed, and then that would be called quote unquote insanity. Because that's like to the point where all you do is like walk around naked talking to yourself. That is like really deep in the trauma and brokenness. But other than that, possession only happens at certain times. So like if someone does rituals, they may get possessed during the rituals. If they do drugs, they'll get possessed while doing drugs. Just at certain times is really my point. Like if somebody has certain trauma where like certain things trigger them and make them really irate, like how quote unquote narcissists get, where like they get mad over little things because of the trauma that they have, and then they like just get possessed, and then they just start throwing stuff and screaming and trying to kill everybody and doing weird stuff. Yeah, like that. So
It's kind of hazy. I have a lot of mental hospital stories because I've been to a lot of mental hospitals. But that was the first.
and you'll notice that people like this, they go to these places, but due to the fact that they quote unquote don't know what causes it and have never treated anybody like they say in their books, nothing is actually really ever done. Maybe they get thrown on like some neurotoxin drugs that can make things worse or make things better for some people for a certain amount of time, which really, like it was originally stated, nobody under age 25 was ever supposed to be given these drugs, but that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, they never treat anybody. And that's one of the funny things with like the homeless crisis haters. I guess that's what I'll call them for right now. They're always saying that like the homeless crisis was just caused from asylums being shut down in the 60s or something like that. Which that's not true for so many different reasons, and I already have a whole video about that. But they people like that also say that if homeless people who are apparently that like means the same thing as mentally ill or insane people would just go to rehab and get treatment for their mental illness, because apparently there's rehab for mental illness now, they would be fine. I don't know why people have this idea that there's like some drug or something that treats mental illness. The only thing that could treat it is deliverance, which is a process, not a one-time thing, and counseling, and also getting yourself out of an environment and even stopping certain things that could either like bring the spirits back or even cause you to get messed up, depending on why you actually got messed up in the first place. But there is no rehab for mental illness in general. But a lot of people say that, and I don't know where that comes from.
And that's when I found out I had schizophrenia. I was.
And last thing, this also reminds me of like this testimony or story anyway that somebody has said, where they were like they realized that the mental health system was a scam when they tried all of the drugs and none of them even worked, for them at least.
17, I think. 16, 17. So yeah, this is kind of my first video, so I didn't want to say too much, but if there's anything you need to know or you want to know, or if you think that you may have schizophrenia or depression, let me know in the comment section. I'll talk to you about it, or I'll make a video about it, if that's what you want. Because I don't have any friends, so I'm always on the internet. Alright, so see you later. Well, I won't see you later, because that would be kind of weird. See you. No, you'll see me later. Bye.
Okay, so now to read the rest of my notes, if I even have enough storage space for this, because I really want to edit this into the other part. So the second thing I wrote, or at least this it has a 2 beside it. Now, the mental health system is currently ran by self-proclaimed atheists who say in their books that they don't know what causes mental illness and have never cured anybody. This was something that my mom's boyfriend would always bring up during my abuse situation. He would always talk about how he didn't even believe in mental illness and how they always say in their books that they've never cured anybody. He claimed he read the DSMV. I had my own DSMV at one point, but obviously that was too big to bring with me. And I read some stuff out of there. So, yeah, there was that. That's what that reminds me of. Many say that they don't even believe in mental illness, but psychiatry's founding fathers were different. They were your occultists, eugenicists, thelemic child molesters, if I can even say that, such as Sigmund Freud and Dr. Money, who pushed the sexual philosophies you see heavily pushed today in schools and media. Of course, well, there's so much I could say about who's really pushing those philosophies, but of course, these would be the people to make labels like DID to cover up the spiritual repercussions of child abuse and even physical. DID rituals slash sexual SRA include, here's some other terms for it: buck breaking, Willie Lynch syndrome, MK Ultra slash monarch mind control, beta sex kitten programming. It's also called Virgo Vasal, SRA sex trafficking, etc. Number 4, even while being self-proclaimed atheists, many psychiatrists or medical professionals in general are occultic. Okay, hold up. Many psychiatric or medical practices in general, can't even read my own handwriting, are occultic or pagan. For one, they take an oath to the fallen watcher Hippocrates. 2, giving out mind-altering pharmacia. And, oh yeah, disclaimer that I should have said first that I have written on here. Real schizophrenia versus, oh yeah, I'm supposed to go over real schizophrenia versus abusers using the label to get others to mind their business when it comes to like abusing people. So something to keep in mind, even though mental illness comes from trauma anyway. So just because somebody has a schizophrenia label or actually has schizophrenia doesn't mean that they're just running around lying. Because a lot of people just feel like mental illness is just people running around lying about things. Also, even lying about having issues, because a lot of people still believe that mental illness is just like something that people pretend to have to get attention. But yeah, so I don't really know what to say to make a difference to that other than what I already said. But it's just two different things, obviously. It's really common for people who don't even have the symptoms of schizophrenia or many other labels to like just get the label thrown on them by abusers because they know that other people already don't care and want a reason to not help. So if you just tell them that like the kid you're sex trafficking, that you kidnapped is schizophrenic, people will just feel like, okay, that's the reason for me to just walk away, because they really don't care and they're too scared to do anything anyway. So there's that. Pick up where I left off. Mind altering pharmacia, synthetic and natural drugs like weed. Well, synthetic and natural pharmacia like weed and psychedelics. And some things I want to mention from the video. I remember her mentioning the first time I watched it that she stayed with her dad. I don't remember hearing that the second time, but I put, notice how abuse victims commonly end up feeling like they have no options due to either like how their trauma impacted them or just because of other reasons. So they end up staying with the same stuck with their turn into to the same people who messed them up. I definitely wrote this in the dark. I know for a fact. Voices slash. Oh yeah, this is for hearing voices, something that was mentioned in the video, obviously, and also for the screenshot that I read first. So I put, to be honest, everyone hears voices or thoughts in their heads to the point where jokes that are supposed to be relatable are made about it on the internet or on different social media platforms. One example that I wrote off to the side is, quote unquote, bro, let the intrusive thoughts win. Also, a video I'm going to link in the description that I, funnily enough, found like a day after I wrote this, of some dude making a joke about the voices he hears when he's about to drink. Although this is only because demonization and even mental illness is normalized, and it's normalizing insanity is a big agenda these days. In the Four Agreements book I went over in my Message to Abuse Kids video, the author says him and his ancestors referred to these voices as quote unquote the gods. Reality is these voices are, 1, your own thoughts, 2, thoughts put in your head by demons, external or internal, and even demons playing off of past abuse. One example of demons playing off past abuse is number 1, your empath, anointed, or spiritually sensitive, and you start sensing and hearing demons of strife or jealousy when you enter a room full of, oh gosh, I cannot read this, stereotypical quote unquote mean girls. Well, yeah, that's an example for like if you're already like just spiritually sensitive. One of these is supposed to be for trauma though, so I guess example 2, someone with a form of PTSD or any mental label hearing a voice of their abusers or a voice saying things that their abuser would say, such as, "You're a disgrace, you're just like your mom, you're not good enough," etc. So yeah, the first example was something else. Just for like if you're spiritually sensitive, you may like hear voices of strife or something like that if you walk into a certain room, just like areas with certain energies there. Then the second example is for like the trauma, which this girl with schizophrenia mentioned. So there's that. Reality is there's two voices. Oh, I already read all that. Okay, hold up. All of that was in like brackets though, so I'm trying to find the next half. Okay, then there's this that I wrote. The still small voice of Yah, although that's rare in cases like this video. And then lastly, your conscious. The the carnal world has caused people to believe that all thoughts are their own, which also makes people either listen to the voices or ignore them instead of seeking real help, like deliverance and fasting, or they go take neurotoxin psychotropics, which is also not real help, which causes brain damage, which leads to an actual chemical imbalance and hundreds of mental, physical, and neurological problems, which can eventually lead to death. Also, if the issue actually is physical, it means that you like have some stuff going on because of what you're eating or something. And the medical system isn't like here to get to root cause and actually treat anything regardless of what it is. So you're not gonna get treatment for Jack regardless of what. But yeah, so there's that. Just like Pastor Stephen Darby said in one of his videos, if you're hearing voices, something is talking. And then I wrote, I noticed that people on the same side of the schizophrenia spectrum as this girl, or maybe all, will have doctors telling them the voices are fake, almost as if they're insinuating that the person is pretending to hear voices. Yet they never tell the person not to listen to the voices and not to do what they say. It's like having a kid who sees a monster under his bed and telling him it's not real and to go away because you don't care, you don't believe. Even though this monster under the bed issue can be easily fixed by doing warfare prayers against the demon with your kid, but of course, the medical system is here to keep you sick. And I guess that's all I wrote for this. Yeah, then that's it.